We start with breaking news from Syria, where one of the country's fighter jets has been shot down by US-led forces. The Syrian government says the plane was conducting a counter-terrorist raid when it was brought down to the south of Raqqa. Damascus-based journalist Ali Ibrahim has more.
The statement of the US refers to the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is the militia group operating along with the US-led coalition trying to take the city of Raqqa from the control of ISIL. But we can also confirm, according to several military sources from the Syrian military operating in that area, that the fighter jet was actually carrying out airstrike against a convoy from ISIL moving from the town of Al-Sakhna into the town of Al-Rasafa, 30 kilometers southeast of Al-Raqqa city, and that the fighter jet in no way posed any direct or indirect threat to any militia group from those militia groups operating alongside the US-led coalition trying to get control or gain control of the city of Raqqa. But I think there is more to that story, and what's more to that story is that the US is trying to draw boundaries in the Syrian conflict and red lines for the Syrian army not to cross them, and trying to actually prevent the Syrian army from achieving two goals. The first goal is to limit the presence of the Kurdish militias, which is the backbone of the Syrian Democratic Forces. And the second purpose is to actually hinder the operation of the Syrian military to arrive to the city of Deir ez-Zor and break an ISIL siege on that city that has been ongoing for 2 years. To put things in perspective, if ISIL is pushed out of Raqqa, which seems to be the scenario, it's very likely that it will be pushed out through an agreement between the SDF and ISIL that would allow ISIL fighters a safe way out, and those fighters will then will have only one choice: to go to Deir ez-Zor and try to take the city from the hands of the Syrian government, since they have been actually encircling that city for the past 2 years. The Syrian battlefield is a very complicated one right now. It has the presence of various international and regional powers, starting from the United States, Russia, Syria, Iran, Hezbollah, the Lebanese Hezbollah. In addition to, now you have the involvement of the Iraqi army and Iraq. In addition to Turkey, all these regional powers, they are directly involved in the Syrian conflict right now. It's very difficult to speculate what will happen in upcoming days, but what I can tell you for a fact is that it seems that the Syrian army and the Syrian government are adamant on actually moving on with their operation to break the ISIL siege on the city of Deir ez-Zor, and trying actually to limit the ability of the US-led coalition and the US troops who are now on the ground in Syria, limiting their ability to move and limiting their ability to create influence centers on the Syrian battlefield. And we have to understand that this is not just a Syrian issue, this is more of an international conflict and power play between the US and Russia on Syria's territories.
Ali Ibrahim there. Well, the incident outside Raqqa is the latest in a series of US strikes against forces fighting for the Syrian government. Over the past 2 months, the US-led coalition has conducted several bombing raids against pro-government fighters near the border with Jordan. The Pentagon claims to have issued prior warnings to the pro-Assad forces, which allegedly breached a so-called deconfliction zone. And in a statement on the downing of the Syrian fighter jet, the US used that same term again, saying the plane had crossed into such an area. The Russian foreign minister, however, has rejected the use of the term, saying the United States has drawn up its own boundaries in Syria without consulting other powers.
I'm not aware of the deconfliction zones the Pentagon is referring to. Maybe there are zones that have been established unilaterally, where the coalition thinks it can do whatever it wants. We don't recognize such zones. As you know, there are already de-escalation zones that have been agreed on and established by Syria, Iran, Turkey and Russia. Any steps by the coalition which don't receive consent from Damascus are not legitimate.
Peter Ford, who served as UK ambassador to Syria and Bahrain, told us the US military is willing to resort to any measures to protect the armed groups it's supporting.
This new attack is by no means unprecedented. But let's not forget that the circumstances where this new attack took place, it appears that it took place in an area where the so-called Syrian Democratic Army, that is, rebels financed by the US, was operating in the vicinity of Raqqa, it's very much an American creation. It's their pet. And it appears that the Syrian plane may have been attacking their pet dog. And given that this is a very American operation, the attempt to drive ISIS from Raqqa city, then the Americans reacted to protect their toy.